Good afternoon to everyone who's in Cairo, and good morning to our participants in North America. I want to thank you all for registering and coming, and I'll thank you in advance for your active participation. We're very excited about this session. When we were asked to run a session on the topic of dealing with assessments in the time of COVID, immediately College Board came to mind, because here's an organization that designs assessments, validates them, and conducts them at scale. And so they're really experts in all of the facets of dealing with assessment, including the pedagogy, the psychometrics, and the logistics. And so we're very lucky to have a team here. I reached out to a colleague of mine, a very dear and valued colleague named Kathy Brigham. She's the Senior Director for Academic Relations. And she and I have worked on a number of things together. I served on an advisory council with her recently, putting together a workshop on AP Capstone, AP Research, AP Seminar, which are very exciting initiatives and maybe a topic for some other future discussion. But she put together this team to come and talk about assessments. And we're very fortunate today to have with us Terry Redican, who is Vice President of the AP Program Delivery. So he has tremendous responsibility in oversight of the AP program. And I'm amazed that he's able to make it, because right now he's responsible for overseeing scoring of over 4 million AP exams. And so we're lucky to have him here. He has a unique perspective. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand the baton over to the AP team. Thank you.
Well, Dan, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here to join you and the program that you're running and be part of the session today. As you say, we're not quite done with AP testing this year. We're in our third testing window right now. And we haven't had a chance to really talk all that much externally about our experience. But when Kathy brought the opportunity, I said I'd actually love to be able to talk about it and share our experience thus far, and just participate in the rich dialogue and back and forth that could come of this. So I'm happy to be here. So my name is Terry Redican. I'm the Vice President of Program Delivery for AP, and I live in a town called Weston in the state of Virginia. So we're about 17 miles outside of Washington, D.C. And I'm responsible for the administration of the AP program. It's our annual school year cycle and all the processes that support it. So each school year we have about 3 million students instructed by about 180,000 AP teachers across about 20,000 secondary schools. They enroll online in our platform in August. They register for exams in the fall. They take primarily paper-based exams in May. They have 25,000 college faculty and AP teachers who usually assemble in person to score essays every June. And then scores are released in early July. That scoring right now is going on online, though. I'm in my 10th year at College Board, and my background before joining College Board had been in new technology adoption and operational change management for large organizations. We spent the last 10 years at College Board modernizing the AP annual cycle, better leveraging digital, moving some key functions online like score reporting and essay scoring, as well as a few components of some of the subject exams in our portfolio. But transitioning to full-scale digital assessment and across all of our AP subjects was still about 5 to 10 years away, given the landscape of school readiness. So let's talk about that. Let's go back to the weekend of March 14th. Do you remember where you were March 14th and what was going on and what you knew about COVID-19 at that time? Because it had sort of been in the news enough at that point. But I'm going to go back to the weekend of March 14th, because that was a Saturday night, and we were celebrating my wife's 50th birthday at a local restaurant with a small gathering of friends. Social distancing was still a relatively new term, and it was only encouraged at that point in the state of Virginia where I live. It was not mandated. The College Board offices had been closed for a week at that point. We'd recently made the decision to delay international shipments of our paper exams. And we had a meeting that following Monday morning to evaluate the prospect of delaying domestic shipments. So we're at my wife's 50th birthday party, and my boss calls for the first time ever on a Saturday night in 10 years. So I pick up to make sure he's okay, and he says, "Terry, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I don't think we can wait until Monday to talk about our plan to handle COVID-19. We need to meet tomorrow morning to sketch out whether we're going to cancel exams this year or whether we consider doing something online, given the latest data on the spread of COVID-19. Can we please meet Sunday morning so we can draft options ahead of a Monday morning call with the president of our organization?" So after some back and forth, I hung up the phone. I went back to my wife's party, apologizing for stepping out, and told her what was going on. And she was understanding. And then she said, "Wait, don't AP exams start in like 2 months?" And I said, "Not quite. They're scheduled to start May 4th. It's just 7 weeks from this coming Monday." And so began our journey. So what I want to cover today is, what is AP? I'm not sure how familiar everyone who's attending here is with advanced placement, so I'll cover that a bit. Then we'll talk about the decision to move forward with online exams, online assessment, and the data we looked at to before we moved ahead with what was a pretty quick decision. We'll talk about the exam format. We'll talk about how we prepared students. And then we'll get into test security. That was one of the hottest topics, as you can imagine. And I know that we got some questions from this group that there would be interest in talking about that. So happy to talk about that, of course. And then we'll talk about our results to date. We're still in the thick of the administration. We're not really in the thick of it. We're in the third testing window. So there's a few thousand kids that we're going to test this week, right up to June 30th. We're scoring exams right now that happened in our first 2 testing windows, and we're planning to release scores on July 15th. So things are moving very fast. And then if we have time left, we can do Q&A right after, or I know there's time after the second presentation to do Q&A. I had planned to use the chat window here to do some interactivity. Let me see if I can, see if I'm going to be able to do that. I don't know. I have a question. If you could put in the chat window.
I'll take care of that for you.
Oh, can you put that? I want to know if folks have heard of AP before. Who's heard of AP? Just to get a sense of where you are as an audience. Yes, just a simple yes or no. Have you heard of AP? Do you have some level of familiarity with the advanced placement program? Yes or no?
I'm getting a mix. Mostly no's, Terry.
Okay.
But there are a few yeses. Mostly no's.
Great. So that's good. Good to know. Good to know. So I think we'll start in the right place with where we are. What is AP? So the advanced placement program has been around since 1955. Minimize window. Students take university level courses while still in high school, and allows them the opportunity to earn college credit, advanced placement to a subsequent course, or both. And it consists of college level courses developed by the program that high schools can choose to offer. It's a portfolio of college level courses. High schools can offer some, all. High schools can choose to offer none. And the exams are administered at the end of the school year after the course, each May. And there are 38 courses across 9 subject categories, as you see there on the right of this slide. And AP exams are scored on a scale of 1 to 5, with 3 or better considered a passing score. And college is granting credit typically for a 3 or higher on the AP exams. So the delineation of what those scores mean is a 5 would equate to, say, an A+ or an A in a college course. It means you're extremely well qualified in that specific subject. A 4 would be categorized as very well qualified. A 3 is still qualified. 2, there's possibly qualify. Typically, you don't get credit for a 2, and with 1, there's no recommendation for credit. So as I mentioned, there's 38 courses across 9 subject categories. Each course is modeled on a comparable introductory college course in this subject, and it's developed with higher ed faculty. The course culminates in a standardized college level assessment, or AP exam, that's comprised of multiple choice questions and free response questions. There's typically 40 to 60 multiple choice questions. Usually there's a stimulus and clusters of 3 or 4 questions around that graph or chart or passage that are the multiple choice questions. And then there are free response questions or essays. Let's say essays for humanities courses, or like problem sets for our STEM courses. And they're about a 3.5-hour experience, typically, 3 to 3.5-hour experience for each AP exam. They're given in May each year at locations around the world. I know APs in, I believe, around 140 different countries. Schools must be authorized by our AP course audit. My team administers an AP course audit. And what that does is approve use of AP courses, the AP designation by high schools. What that means is that there are curricular requirements for each AP course, and there are resource requirements, whether it be lab requirements or textbook requirements or other sort of technical requirements, computer requirements. And so long as a teacher can show evidence that they understand the curriculum framework, the skills and content that are part of that AP course, and the school is able to attest that they can meet the resource requirements for that AP course, they're approved and authorized as part of our course audit. So let's talk about the benefits of AP. These are advanced academic courses. It's university level coursework in high school. The rigor of the coursework pushes students and helps bring out their best. It helps them build skills and confidence and things like time management, study skills, where they can leverage their creativity and problem solving. It helps students get into university, right? It's a signal that a student is ready for rigorous college level coursework. 85% of selected colleges and universities report a student's AP experience favorably impacts admissions decisions. And that's because students who take AP and succeed in AP also succeed at the university level. We have ample somebody might want to go on mute there, please. Research shows that students who receive a score of 3 or higher on AP exams typically experience greater academic success in college, whether it be with their graduation rate, 4-year graduation rates, whether it be with first-year GPA, college persistence. There's a range of research out there. GPA in their major, if they've taken a preceding AP course in that discipline. There's a set of research out there, and that's why universities want to grant credit to students and attract them and find them. And there's a real benefit to students. They get to save time and money. Right? Most universities offer college credit and advanced placement, and it helps students fulfill graduation requirements early. It gives them the ability to skip introductory courses, have greater flexibility with their college schedule, or some students choose to graduate early. So that's an overview of the AP program. So I'm gonna move us into the topic at hand. Kathy, can you see if there's any questions about AP? Are there any immediate questions about AP before we get into?
I'm going to check the chat box, and I am not seeing anything right now.
Great. Okay. Thanks for keeping an eye on that, Kathy.
Sure.
Just so folks know, there is time at the end, and I know we have a session for discussion later on, but if there is any questions, Kathy will keep an eye on the chat box, and I'm happy to take them as we go. So Kathy, maybe what I'll do is I'll check with you periodically, so we can make sure that there's we can knock out some straightforward questions if folks want to go there. Okay, so the crisis was mounting, and we had to make a decision, as I talked about it, my wife's 50th birthday party. And so we wanted to look at some data. And the data was mounting. It was very clear what was going on with COVID. I've got a snapshot here from March 11th a snapshot from March 20th, and then a snapshot from April 15th, right? And so at March 15th was that time I got that call, March 14th. And so that week of the 16th through the 20th, things changed quite a bit. Beginning of that week, there were 27 countrywide closures, 380 million affected learners. Less than 10 days later, it expanded to 156 countrywide closures, 1.3 billion affected learners, and 76% of total learners affected. So we had made a decision by that point to move forward, and we were glad we did, because less than a month later, you see the trend, of course, continued, as the world knows. So we said, what do students want to do? Let's survey students. Let's find out if they wanted to test. If there's not demand for it, there's no reason doing all that it would take to pull this off. At-home testing. How could we possibly pull off at-home testing if students weren't interested in it? Maybe they were happy that there was no AP tests this year. We were overwhelmed. We were frankly a little surprised. 91% of students reported a desire to take the AP exam at the end of the course. And if you read the comments on why, many students were just learning at the same time that they were losing the chance to do the spring rituals of their senior year of high school. Basically, all school events were canceled. They had time, and they said they wanted a sense of normalcy, and they wanted the opportunity to earn that college credit that they had worked much of the school year to achieve. So that was pretty much what we were interested in learning. You know, would students want this opportunity? And we were interested in giving it to them. We wanted to find out when would they like to take the exams. AP exams are supposed to start on May 4th. We didn't quite think, after just doing a little bit of feasibility analysis, that we could be ready May 4th, but we said, you know what, we think we can be ready by May 11th. Let's put that as the first option for students. And we gave students a choice of 6 weeks, and they showed they definitely wanted to take those exams in May. And so the overwhelming preference was, or the large preference was, for the second, third week of May, and we scheduled exams for them. So number of educators around the country, as I mentioned, there's 180,000 AP teachers, there's about 50,000 administrators, principals, and testing coordinators and counselors that are part of the AP community. They reached out, and they had sentiments similar to this. Amidst these difficult times, the possibility of earning college credit has exponential benefits to students. Not only will they achieve that which they work towards for so many years, but they will also reap the emotional and psychological benefits of this accomplishment. So we felt very good about moving forward with this, even if we weren't quite sure, you know, how we were going to be able to pull off such an endeavor. So let's talk about exam format. The 2020 AP exams were developed in close consultation with higher ed faculty, as AP exams are every year. We were holding the exams from May 11th to May 22nd. Every exam had a window. Each day there were 3 exams, one at noon, one at 2 p.m., and one at 4 p.m. East Coast time. They were all held at the same time around the world. I'll say more about that later. That was one of the security measures that we needed to employ. So every exam was held at the same time, which created some challenges for folks in time zones that were a little further away. We also had makeup test dates in June. And so we're in the first week of June was the first set of makeup test dates. And now we're in the second set of makeup test dates right now. In the general exam format, we developed secure online free response exams for each course. Most exams had 1 or 2 free response questions, and each question was timed separately. Students needed to write and submit their responses within the allotted time for each question. So let me talk again a little bit more about AP exam tests and the questions that we use. We have both multiple choice questions and free response questions. Free response questions are essays, or for STEM, they're prompts to which a student constructs their response, as opposed to answering a multiple choice question. These questions, these free response questions, they're designed to elicit college level skills in the specific college, course, or discipline. And it's part of why students are able to earn university level credit, and why we were thinking they would be more difficult. And in addition, we were also thinking they'd be more difficult to cheat on for students than would be maybe multiple choice questions, at least in terms of how we were thinking we might administer an online at-home exam. So every AP question that we had previously written went through a series of hacking reviews where content experts attempted to find the answers to the questions in textbooks online and so on. We had to throw out 50 to 90% of traditional AP questions depending on exam. We needed to design questions that couldn't be searchable on the internet if we were going to move to allow students to test outside of their schools at home. And so we had to develop new questions that required a student to demonstrate a skill by giving them a new piece of information in that question. It's not in a textbook, and have them apply their skill to that. We had to develop a new set of primary sources that were not published. We developed documents that students wouldn't have seen before, problem sets that they couldn't Google that required a skill to solve. So let's look at a few examples before we go further on exam format. So I've got 3 examples here. This first one's in AP Psychology. In this psychology question, you get a sense for the scope and the fact that looking up a definition doesn't earn the point. It's being able to apply the definition of algorithm, self-efficacy, or cognitive map, being able to apply that definition in the context of the situation described above about Rebecca, a student on a trip to a new city with her history class. Just give you a second to look at that. Similarly, I'll move on to AP Physics. This is 2 identical objects, A and B, move along straight, parallel, horizontal tracks. We've got some prompts after that students need to answer. Right? Students might look up concepts such as velocity, but answering the questions below requires using the given data points and applying the skills that they've acquired over the course of the school year. Give you a moment to look at that.
Terry, we have a question about why free response questions were determined to be more resistant to cheating than the multiple choice.
Yeah, so with multiple choice questions, it takes some time to develop those. And based on the need that we saw to have a much larger variety of questions for students and what an individual multiple choice question is able to test and assess from a skill and content knowledge standpoint, we didn't see, first of all, an ability to develop enough different multiple choice questions in the time frame that we had available. That's one bit. We thought we could develop enough free response questions in that time frame. And then 2, the nature of a free response question and what a student responds with is their own custom work. In other words, there is a number of ways a student could respond to this question, this physics question here, or the psychology question I just showed you, or I'm going to show you a calculus question. And based on a student having to really construct a response, there's sort of a unique signature in every student response. Now, when it's multiplied over hundreds of thousands of students, you do spot some similarities. And for that, we have some security measures I'll talk about in terms of plagiarism checking, et cetera. But in terms of just the signature of a student and in a time-constrained manner, their ability to respond to a free response question, it was more difficult to really see a student being able to cheat. If you're in a physical classroom, a student could look to their shoulder partner and perhaps copy the answer. But if we could make different free response questions and have a time nature for students to construct their response, if they spent time cheating, trying to figure out what the question is and find someone on the internet who had the same question because no one in their class had the same question, and then come back and compose it, if they copied exactly, we'd catch it in plagiarism. And if they didn't, the short time to respond and put their sort of unique signature on the response, we found that to be a higher bar in terms of a student's ability to cheat. Now, had we had time to develop many more multiple choice questions and more time to develop an online solution, you can look at some different, you could make a case that multiple choice, you could maybe make more difficult to cheat. So it all depends on the factors I mentioned, as well as just how much time you have to invest. With these free response questions, we typically have 4 or 5 versions of an AP exam. We developed 30 versions so that we could basically give every class, each student in a class, a unique set of questions. And then, so this last example in AP Calculus, it's very similar to some of the elements that I mentioned before. You have to compute and solve the problem, applying their understanding of the concepts. And even if they look up something like rate of change, that might not help them so much. They really need to apply their skills. And they did. Internet use was discouraged, but it was not prohibited, right? And so you would find during any AP exam, depending on some of the questions that were out there, you'd see a spike at a particular time on rate of change. This is just a simple Google search on Google Analytics to see these terms. And you saw this one after the other, depending on what the exam topic was, but it didn't matter. We prepared for that. It didn't help them apply the skills. So that was pretty key. It was, some of the principles of an open book, open note exam, open internet exam. Students might try to use the term, get the specific content, but unless they can apply that skill, they're going to have trouble with the question. So let's get back to exam format. The exam entry and completion process. Students received a personalized e-ticket via email, and we also placed it in their online student account 2 days prior to each exam. It's a unique e-ticket specific to them, that subject, and that administration window. And students could take their exams on a phone, tablet, or computer. We use the same technology that Amazon Web Services does for major events. There's something called Black Friday in the US. It's the largest online retail day. And the technology that needs to be available to handle just the surge in online traffic of shoppers is essentially the most resilient, high-performing technology out there. And so we worked with Amazon to build this solution in the 7 weeks that we had. The length of the exam for most subjects were 45 minutes long. As I mentioned, it was what we call a speeded exam in psychometrics, in terms of students had a finite amount of time to answer these prompts, and there was 5 minutes additional time for uploading. So this is relative to a 3.5-hour exam, right? So we picked the 1 or 2 free response questions that had the best correlations with the overall exam scores for a full-length exam, and we chose those and adapted those for online. There were, we designed, so there's 38 AP courses. We designed our solution for 26 of our 38 exams. In terms of the other 12, 6 of them are courses with portfolio-based assessment. So our 3 courses, art and design 2D, art and design 3D, and drawing. Those are portfolio-based assessments where students submit a portfolio of their artwork. And they submit it digitally. There's also computer science principles, our capstone research course, and our capstone seminar course. Those 3 courses also have a portfolio-based assessment. So that happens every year, and we just used that and didn't have a separate online exam. And then there are 6 other courses that didn't use this exam platform that I'm going to show you a little bit more about in a second. We have 6 world language and culture exams. We have Chinese, Japanese, French, Italian, German, and Spanish. It's about 300,000 students across those 6 AP exams. And students were set up to complete 2 listening and speaking tasks to to be consistent with free response questions that we have on previous full-length AP exams. So we developed an app for that. The person who developed that app is with me today and available to answer some questions about that. She also leads AP strategy, Abby Whitbeck. I'm sure will help me in question and answer. And so before I say any more about the exam series, let me play a short video for you. This is actually a 4-minute video, but it explains the whole format. Before I hit play on it, let me see if there's anything in the chat window, Kathy. Is there any questions out there?
We've had some interesting discussions sidebar while you've been also sharing information, and I feel like a lot of the questions have been answered right now. I'm pending one, but it doesn't flow right now with this particular session. And I'll just mention, Terry, there is an option of sharing the video offline because we have about 19 minutes left for the session. So it's your call. We can send the video afterwards, or if you want to stream it now.
How about if we stream it now? Because I'll move the presentation along a little bit so we make sure we get everything.
If you need a few extra minutes, please just let me know.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Great, I'm going to try it from here.
Is enter your 8-character AP ID. And then...
All right, Can folks see my screen? What do folks see? Do they see a video?
Right now, I still see the static slide, not the screen, not the video.
Great. All right. Stop share there. Start share here. Share.
Yep.
Great.
Fill out all your personal information. This video will walk you through the AP 2020 exam's important steps and offer tips. 2 days before the exam, you will get an email with your AP ID and an e-ticket that will take you to your personalized exam. Check in 30 minutes before your exam starts. The first thing you'll do is enter your 8-character AP ID and then fill out all your personal information. Note the timer at the bottom of the screen. Hit continue. The exam will automatically start when that countdown hits 0. And once it starts, the timer located at the bottom will count down how much time you have to read your question, craft your response, and submit it. If your exam has 1 question, you will have 50 minutes. If you have 2 questions, you will get 30 minutes for the first one and 20 minutes for the second one. If you are approved for extended time, it will be added automatically. The timer will turn red when you have 5 minutes left. That's when you should wrap up your work and start submitting your response. Once that timer hits 0, you will automatically be moved to the next question. This is important. You can get partial credit for a partial answer, but you will not get any credit if you submit nothing. You can use
Terry, I just lost audio on my end.
I think we lost Terry.
Uh-oh. Yeah, Terry seems frozen. He just sent me a text that says, uh-oh. Oh no, his computer rebooted. Christina, can you pass control over? Ariel, can you pass control over to, I guess maybe me, unfortunately?
While we wait for Terry to come back, it might be a good time to have some questions from the group.
There was one question in the chat. I had referenced it didn't really flow very well with the session where we were in the conversation. But you'll notice on these slides in the bottom that the name College Board is preceded by a picture of, there's a small picture of something. And just in case you're not familiar with that, that little picture of something is an acorn. And that acorn is a seed of a very common tree in the United States, the oak tree. And so it's it's one of the largest trees that grows in the United States. And so it's a symbol of how strong and how strong and powerful something can come from something small. And it's our metaphor at the College Board for the power of education in transforming lives. So starting with something quite small to build a foundation for something that will be transformative for a student's life. And I'm going to scan over to the chat room. Terry is rebooting, and Ariel, you can let me know if you can. I guess I could just start to share a screen. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe you should be able to just share your screen.
Okay, and Abby, I might have you on deck for the next slide because we're going to talk about the World Language app.
Oh, absolutely. I can do that.
Okay.
So one thing that comes up that to my mind is you had to create these big libraries of different questions, and then most students got one or two. It must be very hard to know that all the questions were about equally difficult. It sounds like such a big challenge. How did you deal with that?
Sure, I can. Kathy, do you want me to speak a little to that, and then?
That'd be great. And just remember to hold your mic up.
Oh, thank you. You can hear me, right? Okay.
Yes.
Great question, Dan. So first, we use our faculty committees to provide some judgment, and they grouped the questions into what they called families and organized them into families. That was at the preemptive stage of administering the exams. Once the exams are administered, we can use data on previous experiences we have with students, their PSAT scores, their SAT scores, other data points that we have throughout the year that we've collected to understand, was this question we're about the right set of students earning this many points on this question, we're about the right. Of course, we expect students to be able to overperform their abilities, but at the large scale that we were administering the forms, we were able to make sure that the cut scores get placed at the right point for each one. So for example, if one exam, we would say a cut score would be a student need to have earned 13 points in order to earn the equivalent of a college level C grade. And on a similar form, they might have only needed to earn 12 points. So that's how we integrate prior performance data from the students with their performance on these assessments.
And when Abby uses the word form, that's some internal lingo that we use. It just means one of the formats of the exam. So when we also offer an AP chemistry exam, there'll be maybe 6 forms or variants of the exam that are out there. Then that also helps to prohibit cheating because you don't know which version your friend has.
Should I pick this up where we are on screen?
That'd be great, Abby. Thank you.
Sure. So Terry mentioned that we have a family of 6 spoken world languages. The languages assessed are Spanish, French, Italian, German, Chinese, and Japanese. These exams typically comprise writing, reading, speaking, and listening tasks. We determined that writing tasks would be too easily cheated by students because of applications like Google Translate and other translation tools that students had access to. And there are ways to detect some of that, but it's not immediately easy when students are maybe translating parts of their essay response. So we determined that our preferred tasks that we had a lot of experience administering were tasks where students had to speak extemporaneously in response to prompts. One of the tasks is these students are in a conversation with an interlocutor who's been pre-recorded, and they are given a presentation topic. They're given a couple of minutes to prepare, and then they're asked to respond. So we had to design an application to be able to capture what the students would speak and also to deliver to them the pre-recorded prompts. And again, same logic as the main exams. We had to have lots of different prompts. Each student had to be randomly assigned a prompt that minimized the likelihood that they and their classmates received the same questions. And these were just highly guided experience so that the student couldn't pause the exam in any way. They had to continue. It was just once the exam started, they were continuously recorded. So it gave them no opportunity to pause and maybe look up a question or ask a friend for help or anything like that. So this was the World Languages Exam app. This app supported, I think, the delivery of about 220,000 exams.
Thanks, Abby.
Sure.
I'll let you know that Terry is back. Terry, are you ready? If I stop sharing, can you take control with your PowerPoint? Or do you want me to drive from here?
No, I'm happy to take it back. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Thanks, everyone, for your patience.
Yeah, this is a great example of what can happen online and why we developed a backup email solution midstream. shall talk about momentarily. Okay. So I should have saved that video for the end. Oh well. All right. So picking up where Abby left off, before I pick up, I saw a question in the chat. Why only 2 questions instead of 4 or 5 of a typical exam? When we laid out this plan, we weren't sure that schools would be closed when we originally laid out the plan, and we still had in our minds maybe students will be back in schools, and they'll need to test at these very specific times that we laid out. And we wanted them to be able to test within a 45-minute class window. So that was one of the guideposts, so that we had flexibility because we just couldn't tell exactly what was going on. That's one thing. And then perhaps the bigger thing was the fact of having an uninterrupted sort of testing environment at home. As we thought about the testing environments that we had at home, 1 in 4 students are from a low-income household. They had constraints with bandwidth. And we were looking to make sure that we delivered something that was more feasible than a full-length exam, or even one that went an hour and a half of time that would maybe be what's needed for a full-length set of questions. So that's why we had 2 questions. Let's get back to preparing students. Okay, so in terms of preparing students for it, I'm going to move a little quickly here because I really want to get to the security piece. One thing was about we had to deal with was device and connectivity access. Just such variance from student to student at home. Remember, most schools were not in session come March. The coursework wasn't finished. There was still a unit or 2 left for many courses. Was there a way we could help the AP teachers out there by doing something online to help them cover the remaining content? And how could we just make sure that students were ready for an exam experience they had never trained for before and they didn't know what to expect? So one of the things that we did, we stood up a 100-person customer service team, and we fielded inquiries from more than 28,000 parents, educators, students who were looking for some level of assistance. We helped them connect to local efforts already in place in their school district. We loaned them a device or a hotspot, Amazon Web Services, donated Chromebooks. We helped them connect with local internet service providers to provide Wi-Fi, partnered with an organization called Donors Choose to get more devices out to students. In the end, we were able to distribute 7,500 devices to students to help them be ready to test. And then we had remote learning opportunities. We went out to the 180,000 AP teachers. We have some teachers that we work with that do some consulting and training for us at what we call AP Summer Institutes. And we got some of the very experienced AP teachers who were really well known in their field. And we set up a YouTube channel where they could do lessons each day. And we had lessons in every subject so that we could continue helping students move ahead and cover the full set of content in the course. So we had our YouTube channel that was free, live AP review lessons every day delivered by AP teachers. And the uptake was incredible. We had 33 million views across 5.2 million unique viewers. We kind of wanted to mix it up, make it fun. We had some celebrity, so to speak, guest lecturers. Janet Yellen, the economist who was the chair of the Federal Reserve, Merritt Moore, a physicist who's well known in our field, Melinda Gates, of course, from Microsoft and the Gates Foundation, and many more. It was a neat process. So how do you introduce students to a format they've never practiced? Well, we developed all kinds of resources online to help students. We put out an exam demo so students could literally test out their ability to use it, upload files. We had weekly updates with students, with parents, with guardians, with educators. We had 78,000 AP teachers on a Zoom call, or no, it was a Global Meets call. Was the technology we used for that. It was like a soccer stadium full of AP teachers. And then when we did a parent webinar, I think we had like 130,000 parents show up to just sort of understand how we were going to do this thing. And we had a number of resources we put out there, key steps to take before exam day. The exam schedule and the time zones, as I mentioned, everyone had a test at the same time. So we were hoping that students would be able to, you know, make sure that they showed up at the right time. It's very disappointing to do all that preparation and show up at the wrong time. So took care with that. And students were wonderful, making do in the circumstances. And we needed to make sure the students had acceptable browsers. We were very clear on the types of browsers that you needed available to test on. Acceptable file formats for photo submission. So we wanted to enable students to be able to handwrite if they so choose and take a picture. How many folks on this call know what file format their mobile device saves a file in? Is it a HEIC? Has anybody here ever heard of a HEIC file? What about a JPEG file? Well, I had heard of a JPEG file, and I had heard of a PNG file, but I never heard of a HEIC file until we got into this whole process. It stands for, it's HEIC. It's a format that's used by some of the newer iPhones, high efficiency image capture. It's a really neat thing. Our back-end systems to score the exams don't accept them. So, you know, we had to deal with all kinds of interesting things with students in terms of being able to accept their work. Troubleshooting tips, and you know, how do you register for a makeup exam if things don't go according to plan when you get on in that 45-minute window and you've got test anxiety and you're working with your technology and just hoping it's going to work out. Sometimes it just doesn't work. Sometimes you get knocked off of a Zoom call and you've got to have a plan B. And so we had that. And so, you know, we got positive feedback from students about this. We also received some feedback that wasn't as glowing as this, because, you know, we had to help students through some tough situations when they weren't able to get online and test. So let's talk about test security. I know there was a lot of questions coming in about that. And let me just say something at the top. Live proctoring is perhaps one of the best methods you can use for test security. And for many tests, it's cost prohibitive. But we're a school-based testing model. We have school counselors available to do the proctoring. And with our test taking population and 1 in 4 students from low-income households and the technology challenges, that limited internet bandwidth, you know, proctoring requires a persistent internet connection, and that was going to be an issue. So with AP testing at home, we had an equity goal. We wanted to meet kids where they are, so we did not use live proctoring. If we have to go back to this next year or in the future, we would have to use live proctoring, but we did not use it for this instance for the constraints I mentioned. Plus, standing it up in that limited amount of time would have also been quite challenging. But it was mostly an accessibility issue to make sure that we would have the time able to ensure students could use a solution that we put in place. One of the good things is many parents can't really help their kids all that well with AP questions. And so, you know, we had 7 weeks, and in that challenging time frame, you know, students didn't quite know what to expect. Parents aren't maybe facile with AP Calculus like they were some years ago. And so without having time to plan to outwit the system, we had overall a very good experience with test security given a number of things that we did. So let's talk about some of the things that we did do. So in terms of test design, talked about the fact that we had many versions of the test, 30 versions of the test instead of 4 or 5. And that really limited students' opportunity to copy it from their classmates. We used a formula based on class sizes to come up with the fact that we needed 30 versions. And the 15 to 45-minute response time per question also reduced security concerns. It didn't feel great in some respects because students, you know, are anxious about testing and working with the technology and just testing in general. So that was a hard part of it, to have this sort of speeded situation. But from a security standpoint, it worked very well. Before the exams, we were out there with our security team looking at any sort of attempts on social media, and any students that were out there looking to gain an unfair advantage. We tracked them down. We prevented them from taking AP exams. We did quite a bit of social monitoring. The number of policy violations, while it was not insignificant, it was sort of minuscule as a percentage of total exam takers. And so that proved to be a very effective strategy, getting out there, hiring some cybersecurity firms that could help us really monitor and see what's going on. And then the fact that we had so many different versions of the exams, while we thought that would thwart efforts within a class, we weren't exactly sure how it would work. But when students would go on to chat rooms and try and share questions quickly, they realized, wow, I have a different question than this person. How many different questions are there? And it sort of slowed them down in their ability to cheat. The largest volume AP school, a school called Brooklyn Tech in New York City, and we know their administrators quite well, and their students were dumbfounded. Their students are a tremendous set of students, and they said this exam was uncheatable. And so that was kind of neat to hear such a big school have students talk about the exam in that way. We also made outreach to moderators in certain social media platforms so they could help us remove content when we needed. Our cybersecurity experts have a whole range of countermeasures, including a little bit of security theater at the beginning of an exam, helping us sort of put students, a little off balance. They didn't know exactly how much we were monitoring. When they'd hear somebody was caught for trying to flout our policy, word sort of spread. So that was also a little bit helpful. And then after exams, whenever we received reports of violations, we followed up on them. And one of the things that we did that we had never done before is, since we had all this content digitally, we made what we called a student response portal. We provided a copy of a student's responses with their teacher, so their teacher could look online and validate that their work was consistent with what they had seen in class all year long and was representative of the student's abilities. And then we had plagiarism software. So once all of the responses came in, we reviewed them with plagiarism software to see if there were any violations there as well. And we're still working through looking at that process. It takes some time to look at nearly 8 million responses, but they're going through our process. And then folks who violated the policy, we canceled scores. So these are all things that we could do once. As I mentioned, I don't know that this would have been as secure if these were the exact same security measures were we to do this again. And should we head down this path, we're thinking about the need for live proctoring. But we have much more time to figure out the feasibility of that and implement that and see how we could work through some of the challenges that creates. And I just want to say, at no time did we encourage students to violate policies or engage in any that could be entrapment. There were some interesting media articles that came out about just no one could tell, how many versions of the questions we had and how we caught students cheating. And so there were some funny articles about that, but I just want to make sure it's clear. We encouraged all students to adhere to our policies, and we're really pleased with the result from a security standpoint. It worked for this year. And let's get to the results to date. So we had 4.633 million students begin the exam between May 11th and May 22nd. We had just under 4.3 million complete the exam. It's just under 93%. So the number of students who started but did not complete the exam is on the order of about 7%. And they all had the opportunity to request a makeup exam. And many of them did. We had about 240,000 makeup requests. And then we had about 19,000 where we detected errors with the submission of their work, and we let them know, hey, we did not receive your work. There was an error somewhere. You'll be automatically moved into the makeup window. But this 7.2%, it was made up not just of students who ran out of time on the exam. And that's sort of a big lesson learned for us. And so, as I mentioned before, we use the same technology that Amazon does for the largest online retail day. We only had 0.43% of errors. That's not bad. That's pretty good. In fact, when you've got all these concurrent users hitting your system, hundreds of thousands of hits at a time, less than 1% of students had an issue with corrupted files or submission issues of other kinds. But there were 7% of students who didn't finish, and some portion of them, about 5 of that 7%, had what they would perceive as either some disruption at home that prevented them from uploading, or a technical issue. And they were very frustrated, these students. You know, even if a user error isn't your fault, if a local error isn't your fault, it is your problem if you're administering these exams. So that was a challenge for us. While we had the opportunity for makeup tests in June, we also, midway between week 1 and week 2 of our first administration, that weekend of May 16th and 17th, we implemented a backup email submission option, where at the end of an exam, if a student had a problem submitting their responses, we generated a unique email address for that student for that exam. And if they attached their response and got it and sent it to us within 10 minutes, we accepted that response. And so that was a big hit. I wish we had it in week 1. It was a lesson learned. You know, listening to them, reacting to feedback helps you stay focused and stay agile and able to sort of adapt as you go. And we're just still gathering data from our makeup exams the first week of June and the exception window. So all testing concludes on June 30th. So we got some positive feedback, as I mentioned, but there were plenty of others out there that, you know, weren't as satisfied as we'd like them to be with the testing experience. So it's something that will certainly go into, you know, how we progress forward, because there's all kinds of possibilities with it, but all kinds of lessons. So I think I've gone over my time. I'm sorry about that. I am going to pause there. I don't think we have time for question and answer. If you got more questions for us in general, Russell Dover, who is on the call, is our Director of International Higher Education. He's available for any follow-up questions that you might have. I'm going to hang around for the next presentation so I can participate in the discussion, but I'm going to wrap there.
Thanks, Terry. And I'll just let you know there's been a lot of interesting questions in the chat room, and Abby, Christina, Russell, Kate, and I have been madly fielding them. So don't feel like there haven't been ongoing side questions as a result of the information that you shared.
Great.
Dan, would you like to help move us over to the next session?
Sure.
Thank you.
So Dr. Tomer, may I ask, would it be okay for me to see if there are any burning questions? You know, people just eager to hear the answer to their question before they can even manage to listen. If there are such questions and you're okay with it, maybe we could answer 1 or 2 before we move forward.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to answer the questions or go through the questions a little bit. There was scheduled a Q&A session at the end. So if there is a lot of interesting questions here, we can move these questions now and then move the other session with the Egyptian experience later. So it's up to you, but I think it can be done.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dave.
I'm just going to say, if someone feels they have a burning question that they must ask now, please raise your hand and we'll try to address it now. Otherwise, we'll move forward. So I'm going to look for a second for raised hands. Okay, in that case, let's move forward with the partner university view. We are fortunate to have with us today Dr. Tamer El-Nadi. He is Vice President for Education at Ain Shams University in Cairo, and he's going to present his view on much the same topics as were presented today so far about how to deal with assessment under the disruption of COVID. Professor?
Hello, thank you, Professor Dan. It's my pleasure to talk here or moderate this session. I'm going to talk about the Ain Shams University view, but I have also 2 colleagues from Mansoura University and Aswan University who are going to talk about their view and their experience. I would like to start with my colleague, Dr. Mohammed Salem from Mansoura University. to present the view of Mansour University on the remote assessment.
Okay. Hello, sir. Should I start now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Mohammed Salim. I'm an assistant professor at the Mechanical Power Engineering Department, Faculty of Engineering, Mansour University. My presentation today is entitled In Search for a Reliable Remote Assessment System, where I'm going to give you a brief summary about the remote assessment challenges we faced and the strategy adopted by Mansour University during the COVID-19 pandemic. First, let us give a brief timeline. On the 18th of April 2020, the Egyptian Supreme Council of Universities announced its decisions concerning the COVID-19 pandemic. These decisions included the cancellation of the midterm and the oral exams, while a more traditional paper exam was decided for the last year students. Remote assessment techniques were decided for the other years. The remote assessment options were performing or either performing online exams or giving the students research assignments and reviewing them by the faculty members. In any case, the student would be graded on a pass-fail basis without assigning actual grades. For the graded hour system, this wouldn't affect their accumulative GPA. After that, the Mansour University Council was held and decided to give each faculty the freedom to choose either technique. Finally, the Faculty of Engineering gave every course instructor the freedom to choose how to assess their students. For us at the Mechanical Power Engineering Department, all the faculty members chose the online exam technique. First, let's talk about some of the challenges that faced us when we tried to apply the remote assessment. First, there was a very short time constraint in which we had to design and implement the new system. There was also very little experience in handling and utilizing the remote assessment system to its maximum potential, either by the faculty members or by the students themselves. There were also some technical problems that we faced, like updating the already existing system to include the new rules. Also, there were some external constraints we have to face, like the unreliable internet connection in Egypt in some areas, and the pass-fail policy decided by the Supreme Council. And finally, we had to face the phenomena of cheating, and we tried to decrease it to the minimum possible. Now, I will briefly explain the online assessment strategy. As my colleagues, Dr. Asma Khatib mentioned before, the learning management system used by our university is called Moodle, which is available on Arabic and English interfaces. Through this portal, the courses material were provided to the students all through the study suspension period. Then, some guidelines were issued by the faculty to the faculty members outlining all the cornerstones of the remote assessment process. These guidelines included that all instructors must prepare a questions bank and at least 5 model exams, each containing 4 questions by May 14th. The question bank must cover all the curriculum and be uploaded to the Moodle at appropriate time. And the Moodle exams should contain 4 questions that may include essay questions, MCQs, design problems, or mathematical problems, or any combination. The instructor then should send the exam models to the examination committee by email as PDF formatted files. After the exam, the instructors should grade the exam by putting either pass if the answers are sufficient or fail if the answers are not sufficient. The instructor then should send the grade files to the control committee. Also, there were some guidelines for the students about the online exam. By May 1st, the student must register their personal email on the university portal. And by starting from May 21st, the examination portal test run to familiarize the students with the test experience. And by May 15th, the students received the answer sheet template. The exams themselves started from June 6th, where the students received their exams at the assigned timetable through registered mail or through the student personal account. Then the student should answer the exam using the handwriting and scans the answer sheet and converts to PDF format, then signs it and uploads the answer within the time limit, which is about maximum 6 hours. The student then checks the uploaded file before final submission and receives a confirmation email about the uploaded content. The question banks were made available for all the students through the portal, which can be accessed using the students' credentials. These question banks included MCQ questions, mathematical problems, as well as essay problems that cover the whole curriculum. The instructors were asked to provide 5 different model exams that were based on the uploaded question banks. The online exams were prepared to be solved within 1 hour. This is the answer sheet template that was uploaded for the students before the exam. The answer sheet consists of a cover page in which the student writes his credentials and provide 2 forms of authentication, usually his national ID and university ID, and 4 additional papers. Each question should be answered in a separate paper. After that, a series of tutorial videos were prepared to help the instructors and the students to perform their tasks. For example, these snapshots are from a tutorial showing the steps to distribute the exams on the students, starting from choosing the course, then choosing the exam type, either online exam or research, then uploading the exam models, then choosing the students registered in this course, and finally choosing the time starting the exam at which a random model will be sent to each student, and the final time for uploading the answer. Also, there's a tutorial for the students. At the exam assigned time, a random model would be sent to the students. The student should log in to the system either via the portal or via a mobile app called MyU. Then they will find a list of registered courses where they can download the exam, and they have 6 hours to answer and upload the answers. The model system can track the IP of the user to prevent multiple entries from a single source. Also, a team of faculty members was created as a technical support team to communicate with the students during the exam period. The team helps the students who faced problems such as login problems, downloading the exam, or uploading the answers. These charts present the attendance statistics for the first, second, and third years in the Mechanical Power Engineering department. As can be seen, an average of over 95% of the students successfully attended the exam and uploaded their answers. This is a similar statistics to the statistics before, of the previous conventional exams. The absent and failed students will have 2 more opportunities to enter online exams during summer. After the exams, the department performed a small questionnaire between the department students and as well as other departments who took mechanical engineering courses. The questionnaire was divided into 3 main categories: general feedback about the exam, what happened during the exam, and their opinions about the overall experience. These are some of the statistics extracted from the questionnaire. Actually, over 71% of the department students participated in the questionnaire, and about 90% of them approved of the questions and the exams. About 13.4% of these students faced technical difficulties during the exam. The main problems were login problems, downloading the exam, or uploading their answer, in addition to other minor problems. Of those who faced problems, over 91% could solve the problem before the exam period, either by themselves or by the help of the technical support. Almost 90% of the sample students approved of the experience despite the drawbacks and want to repeat it in the future. The same questionnaire was proposed to other department students who registered for a course or more of the mechanical engineering courses, and very similar results were obtained with an approval rate of over 90%. They faced the same main technical problems, but thankfully all the participant sample were able to solve the problems before the exam time, either by themselves or by the help of the technical committee. And almost 80% of them approve of the experience and want new test lines online in the future. These are some of the examples of the students' comments, which are mostly positive. Their main suggestions included decreasing the length of the questions and replacing traditional problems with more relatable questions that can be solved online, like MCQ style problems. Also, some of them disapproved of the pass-fail policy and want future online exams to be graded normally, like traditional paper exams. Finally, we realized that the system we used this semester is not perfect and has a lot of flaws, but we tried to make the best of a bad situation we had to face and use it as a base for future development. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad, for this impressive presentation and impressive experience. I would like to ask you, did you hold these exams for the final years or for the other years?
No, we did it for the first 3 years of the mechanical power engineering department. The fourth year we couldn't do it. We'll have paper exams by July 4th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
This platform that you used, is this something that you built in Mansoura University?
Moodle is an existing system in Mansoura University, maybe for 10 years, but it was adjusted to be with the new within the new rules of pass and fail, and also of the timetable. But it's actually a base that was in Mansoura University for over 10 years.
But the MyE application,
But
U,
are new.
MyU.
Yeah, MyU is new.
Okay. This is something that you developed?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Of course, we are all familiar that Mansoura University are very pioneer in e-learning platforms. So this is something expected from Mansoura University. Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the mic to our colleague, Professor
Dr. Tamer. Dr. Tamer. Hi, Dr. Tamer. It's Ahmed.
Yes.
Can I ask Dr. Salim a question?
Of course.
Dr. Salim, that was very impressive. Really impressed by how far ahead of the curve Mansoura is, and how well prepared you were to handle both the online education as well as the assessment. I just have a small question is, after the fact, after the online teaching that you conducted on Moodle as well as the online exams, have you done any kind of a post-mortem evaluation after the fact to the effectiveness of the exams? Have the faculty has all the professors have been satisfied with how the exams were run and the results? Are you muted? He's muted.
Dr. Muhammad Adam.
Can I give?
Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, now.
Oh, yes, okay.
Okay, Professor. Thank you so much for your comments. Actually, this experience was very important for us as both instructors and students, and we just finished the exams last week. So the questionnaire we did for the student was the start of the process we want to get the flows of the experiment and develop it more for the new semester. Actually, we're starting from now new council and new meetings to know the flows of the experiment and prevent it in the future.
Yeah, I think that's very impressive. Have you also tried to share it with the rest of the universities in Egypt, with like Cairo and Ain Shams and other universities?
We hope to do so. Not yet, but we are starting to evaluate the whole experiment and to get actual results to be able to share it with other universities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor.
I believe, Salim, there was a questionnaire that has been circulating a couple of days ago with a very high rate of, let's say, answers from students. I believe more than 2/3, something like that.
Yeah, actually, I did show the results of the questionnaire of the students, and almost over 70% of the students participated in this questionnaire, and over 90% of them approved of what we did. But that's not actually, we still have to get the opinions of the faculty members, and get more in-depth analysis of the experiment to be able to develop it further.
I have one more question, Dr. Muhammad. Did you use any camera with and integrated with Moodle?
To my knowledge, not yet, because the problem with that is that the exam is not one-to-one till now. The exam is downloaded by the students, then uploaded with the answers to be able to avoid any technicalities about the internet situation. But this actually is one of the suggestions we get to develop to develop the experiment more.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor.
Any more questions for Dr. Muhammad?
How did you select 6 hours for the time? What was the assumption around the task, and what was the assumption around allowing for remediation of technical errors?
I know it's too much time for an exam, but actually the problem for us is not all the students in Egypt have stable internet connections. Some of them are in villages and are in areas without internet coverage. So we had to give them some space to be able to get to a well internet space and to do it. I know it's not ideal, but in this time we thought it was the best option.
Well, the data you shared, it looks really smart, because even though students had technical issues, I think your data showed that like 91 or 92% were able to figure out their problem at some level. So that was great to see.
Okay, thank you so much.
May I add something here? May I add something here? Dr. Ahmed Hamid, the head of mechanical department, Mansoura.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tamer. Actually, the Faculty of Engineering at Mansoura University had an exam test before the final exam to account for the problems which the students face during the final exam. And finally, they decided to give insufficient time, or maybe more than sufficient time, for the students to finalize the exam without any interruption, or to give the students the confidence to complete their exam without any other problems.
Yeah, I should say, this is Ahmed Ghanim again. Just for those of you who are not familiar with the geography in Egypt and Mansoura versus Cairo, for instance, Mansoura is in the middle of the delta, and while it is a city, it is surrounded by farmland and rural areas. So the challenges that they would face in conducting these online activities are much more significant than the challenges that would be faced by school in Cairo. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very impressed by how they organize themselves around online and were able to figure out how to meet the challenges of dealing with not just only a city environment where the internet is widely available, but also a rural environment and students with different access. They were able to still meet the challenge of both the education as well as the assessment on both sides.
Okay, any more questions or comments?
May I add something? This is Adel El-Shabasi from Ain Shams University. Maybe I want to ask Dr. Muhammad, what exactly you mean by the technical support during the exam? Or do you have an technical support team at the Mansoura University to cover this? Actually, I am very impressed by your statistical presentation and this good achievement. But actually, behind this result, you should have some a good technical support team. Did you have this technical support team before the COVID-19 crisis?
Actually, there was an IT team that's already implemented within Mansoura University for the system itself, but we increased its personnel and added some of the faculty members and some of the IT support to be able to face the increasing type of users. But it actually was there was a support team, a technical support team for the site before the pandemic.
Thank you. Another question about what actually you didn't talk about the problem you're facing during this online exam.
Most of the problems were about unreliable internet connections. Some students couldn't log in to their accounts. Maybe they didn't try it before. Although we gave a test run for almost 2 weeks before the exams, and some of them had problems with the internet connection. So that's and downloading the exam itself. Those problems were faced by sending them actual copies of the exam through their email. Also, there was a problem about uploading their answer sheets, and this was solved by talking with the technical committee directly, either via WhatsApp or via mobile.
So I agree with Professor Ahmed Ghunaim about the situation in Egypt, or in some area in Egypt. It is not identical from place to place or from government to the other. So it is a challenge for Mansoura University to achieve this situation. And thank you for your impressed presentation.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you so much.
I guess we are ready now to move to Professor Luay Saad, Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, Aswan University. Dr. Luay. Dr. Luay. You are muted.
Dr. Kamil Nadi?
Yes, please. Now we can hear you.
Yes. Luay Nasrat, Aswan University. Sorry because interrupted for the connected from the bad connected from the internet.
Sorry, can you repeat this again?
Unfortunately, he was saying that he has a bad internet connection. I think he's having difficulties joining.
I think he's trying to.
He's trying with the audio, but it doesn't seem to be working.
Yeah.
Did you want to perhaps, until we sort out his technical problem, do you want to proceed with the Ain Shams part?
Okay, I can do that.
Okay.
Ain Shams, at Ain Shams University. Yeah, it's good that I don't have a presentation, but I will give a short talk. It was good that Dr. Muhammad from Mansoura showed the history of the decisions in the Egyptian system, because we are all following the same rules laid by the Supreme Council of Universities. And in the previous, there were two, it was divided into two parts. The first part is the non-final years, which was converted to either submitting research projects or research reports or design projects. And the final years, which are supposed to happen in next month. In the first phase, although it was allowed to have online assessment or online meetings, there was a lot of fear from our university to go online with the exams because of the internet connectivity issues. So we only resorted to the reports like Mansoura did, and submitted and the submission via Moodle as well. Our university got a license for the university or the whole university from Turnitin that we used to check the plagiarism of the submitted reports. Of course, since we are faculty of engineering, so most of these reports, they were not actually reports, but design projects. So it's nothing to really copy and paste text. It's more like calculations and drawing, which everyone should have his own design. And our teachers tried their best to vary the input. So based on the student code, for example, he takes it as the load or the requirement, so that every student should basically have different numbers and different calculations than the other students. Of course, it was easy in some programs like the architecture engineering programs, because by definition, every student has his own design or his own concept. In the coming times, so that was what has happened. Like Mansoura University, there was no actual online assessment. You know, or by online assessment, I mean the students are sitting at the same time. This we are planning to hold in the maybe in the summer semester or something. But this is that's why we are really interested about this presentation today from AP, to get some ideas and try to implement them in our plan. There are lots of softwares now that are used for proctoring of online exams that we are looking at, and hopefully we should settle on something. And that was actually one of the questions I wanted to pose for the AP online tests. I wanted to ask which platform did they use for the examinations. So is this was this something that they have developed in-house, or they used some commercial platform?
Yeah, so as far as the development platform, we didn't get exactly through the full video, but it was literally Amazon Web Services that we used behind basic web technology. Students logged in using, instead of their typical College Board ID, we used what's called a RAYOT credential. That's provided by Amazon. It's got a timed sort of life. It can be available for up to 1 week. We made it available for 48 hours. So students got what we call their e-ticket, which was this RAYOT token, and they had to pair that when they logged in using a URL in a simple web browser, and they identified themselves in that way. But it was essentially a browser-based experience. So there wasn't a lot of platform there, right? It was a stateless exam format. So the prompt presented itself. We had a timer counting down. before it went away and the second one was revealed. But a student worked in a separate window on their computer, constructing their response in Microsoft Word or any other, Google Docs, any other sort of word processor online, or the prompt revealed itself in their browser and they simply, hand wrote their response, snapped a picture of it, and then uploaded it the same way. And, I don't know if we got far enough in the video to see, but there were 3 ways you could upload. You could upload an actual text-based file from your computer. You could upload photos. And then we also had a text box in there, an open text box, but you couldn't type in there, right? That was one of the things we didn't have time to build what would be called a stateful application. We had to build a stateless application. So it was just a flat web page. So instead of typing in there and being able to handle student responses in a platform, we allowed copy and paste. So copy from whatever word processing app they were using, and you could only paste in that open text field. And when you submitted that, we converted that into a PDF file on the back end that we could run through our plagiarism checker. But it was a very low-tech application because it wasn't a stateful platform at all. But it was built for high concurrency of usage. AP English Language is our largest course. There's 600,000 students that were able to hit it at the same time. So we had to support, an incredible amount of scaling, and Amazon Web Services on the back end helped us do that. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that answers my question. Thank you very much. Yeah, so that's about it for Ain Shams University. We used online submissions for Moodle and integrated Turnitin into the LMS so that there is a continuous check for the plagiarism. And there was a lot of discussion about the plagiarism settings of Turnitin, and because students are not were not trained about the plagiarism things and how to write the report or research paper or whatever, how to rephrase it as other postgraduate students have some training on. And especially these are very young students, freshman years. So there was an internal decision in the university that we only check against other students' reports. We were not checking against periodicals and the internet, but we were checking against each other. So do you have any questions?
Yeah, Dr. Tamer, this is Adel Al-Shabasi again, and I send maybe 2 or 3 questions before, but only one of them is has been answered on the chat page. What about, I don't know who can answer this question, because some people talking now about the education fees. Some people ask for reduce the education fees due to the COVID-19 crisis and the online teaching or something like this. The other question about the exam online and grading of the exam or the report, the research report or the design report, and plagiarism checking or something. All of this put the more and more stress on the professor or on the instructors himself. So I think the system is very difficult for everyone right now, and the situation with the time frame both the student as well as the instructor and the professor under stresses.
I think this is a general question, so I would like to give the mic back to Professor Damfrey to handle or to moderate the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tomer. Yes, so I'm ready to address questions and answers, help to keep this running smoothly as we can. So I'm going to ask for your help, Ariel. If someone already has their hand up and is somehow first in line, perhaps you can let me know who that is.
Sure, I'm happy to watch that. At this point, though, I don't see any hands up. Oh, we have Dr. Adel Al-Shabasi. I will unmute you.
Yes, can you hear me now? This is Adel Al-Shabasi from Ain Shams University.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. The first question about the fees, the students' fees, about the education fees or something like this. And some people nowadays asking for reducing the education fees due to using the online teaching or online learning, and due to the situation of the economic situation for the COVID-19.
I have a comment I wanted to share that, MIT is also interested in this, concerned about this, and we're now exploring an option in which what we do is offer incentives to students who are willing to engage in remote learning. And what we're proposing to do is, instead of reducing their fees, to offer them some special experiences remotely, to make sort of very bespoke kind of remote experiences available to them if they're willing to forego, physical presence on campus. And we haven't decided about it yet, but we've been asked to prepare some options and to give them by tomorrow.
Okay, and the other question about the situation now, the instructor prepare a new kind of exam and review the exam answer, and sometimes he run the plagiarism check or something like this, and this all of this activity or put some stress on the professor. So with this, the time frame to announce the result of the exam, maybe it is something more than the usual stress of the normal situation.
So I'll point out that I agree that there are many ways in which stress on faculty has increased because of the COVID disruption. Maybe the only exception is that our commute times improved. But let me open it up the floor to comments from others. I mean, do you feel that your workload in academia has increased due to COVID, and what do you do to cope?
Actually, I feel that when before COVID-19, I can go to the lecture place or the lecture room and make a good interaction with the student. And after the lecture, it's okay. The student understand the situation, the subject, and my rule is finished. But with COVID-19, some students didn't understand, and so everyone sent me email or ask for a question about the subject of the lecture, and this take more time from me to answer and to prepare the new technique of the lecture and online or the recording the lecture itself with video on the illustration and so on.
Regarding questions and answers from students, one technique that I found useful is to involve peers in answering questions. And the tool that we happen to use in the class that I teach is called Piazza. So students log on and they post their question about the lecture or about the homework. And then students can answer other students' questions. And we as instructors can go in and give them ratings, like pat them on the back for a particularly clear response. And we can even promise to give them some consideration in their grade if they've been very helpful in to other students in class. If they act as an asset to the whole learning community, we can promise to give them some consideration.
I see a raised hand from Dr. Mona Abu Elias. Dr. Mona, would you like to speak?
Yes, if you please. Okay. After hearing the experiment of USA and Ain Shams and Mansoura, I would like to ask about the improvement suggestion for us in Mansoura University, as we will go for hybrid learning strategy in the next semester, I think. So after discussing the issues and what we face the last semester, what will you recommend for us to do in the next strategy? Maybe a new strategy for evaluating, or something we will add to our system. I'm waiting for any improvement, and also the weak points that you noticed from the previous presentation from my colleague, Dr. Muhammad Salim. Thanks in advance.
So I'm trying to think through what we can say about this, what will ultimately make this better. One of the attitudes that we promised to adopt in carrying out this workshop is that this COVID disruption might help us to become better, so that even after the COVID disruption, we would have changed our ways, and that we would retain some of these changes even after things hopefully go back to normal or more normal. And use of media is one of those possible options. I want to praise Mohammed Nabil Sabri for making an effort to develop more online materials in the form of MOOCs to support education on the topic of energy. And so I think that initiative might not have been catalyzed without the COVID disruption, or maybe we're at least accelerating it. What do you think, Nabil?
First of all, I have to thank you because you have sent me, I think yesterday, I mean, very recently, some guidelines about how to make the MOOCs. I can say that the team in Mansoura, at least, are very, very enthusiastic about starting this experiment. I really wish that we can go to the 3 university teams. I don't have any, I hope that Tamer and Luay Nasrat will try to mobilize people from the other universities to make multidisciplinary teams. I think this, in my opinion, the most important thing we can achieve. And as you said, this is the good consequence of COVID, is that it has forced everybody to rethink how education is done. both in terms of not only the technicality of the course offering, but also the quality of the education itself. So it is an opportunity. COVID, in fact, at this level at least, is an opportunity. Yes, I am sure.
Can I make a comment to follow up on Dr. Nabil?
Yes.
So the way I see it now is, again, from the surveys that we and others have made, and from the experience of doing remote teaching during the spring, at least part of the spring, is sort of it's not a monolithic view. There are multiple results. One is
oh, the voice is
Dr. Ahmad?
I believe we have a technical issue.
You could type into the chat.
Is it
Now
back?
we can hear you.
Is it
Yes.
back now?
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that. The typical, yeah. So that is one of the issues that we're always confronting, right?
We are still having a voice issue. Can somebody say to Dr. Ahmad name the voice?
Yes, I'm texting with him right now. Apologies.
The
Sorry
voice.
about that. He's trying to work it out.
I can also add that commuting for me, in my special case, is many hours per week, just commuting. So COVID was a good opportunity for me, honestly speaking. Now, the other, I had to pay time for preparing video lectures, etc. But these are, this is an investment, and it remains.
Okay, is it back? Is it back now?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, sorry about that. So I was in the process of saying that, again, many, both on the faculty, the teachers, as well as students, still feel that the on-campus teaching and learning is a preferred mode. And it's difficult to replace fully with an online model. On the other hand, obviously, we know that we rushed into that transition in March, and many were not prepared, both on the teacher as well as the student side, to adjust to this model. So there's been sort of a sudden transition without enough preparation, and the learning curve was steep for both sides. So given what we were able to do and what Mansoura said that they were able to do, that's very impressive, and that's also promising. It means that probably the more we do, either online or blended, the better we will get at it, and the better people will respond to it. So I don't think we need, or we should judge the model of online or blended just by the experiment in last March. We should just give it more time to get better and better, both the hardware as well as software and the teachingware or the brainware behind it will get better. The learning curve will get less steep, and we will achieve the objectives more. I should also say that it sounds to me like, you know, we will always have to live with different modes of delivering the content. Some of them may be in person, some of them may be purely, totally remote, like the MOOC type activity, and some in some blended form. And again, being forced to try it out and to continue to work on it is sort of a, you know, one of the few positive outcomes of the whole COVID business, that we're forced to do that and we're forced to run different experiments. I think it's very good to continue to exchange notes on it. Clearly what we have today was very, very helpful and very promising, and kind of gave us some definitely hope that it can work better, but it also gave us some challenges to work on to make sure that next time it will be better. So again, while it's kind of a mixed bag at this point, I think it was worthwhile going through it, and it's good to continue to try to improve until we get to the place where we're all satisfied with it.
Thank you. I agree. I just wanted to add two more advantages of this forced transition by COVID. The first is traditionally in winter, some rural roads, small rural roads, were out of service. And I mean, you know that we are Mansoura is within a rural area, as you noted, and sometimes students wouldn't be able even to come just because there was a lot of rain or something like that. And the other advantage of this transformation also, maybe people don't see, is better gender equity. Some families wouldn't like sometimes for their girls to move a lot. So there are advantages, real advantages. And of course, we have to think how we can maintain the good quality of education with these new forms of technology. At least in Mansoura, I believe that when we try to prepare some MOOC courses, is that we can put a blended part on it, just to make I mean to combine advantages of both technologies. We can think, we have to be creative, and we have to see how we can do that. It's always said you cannot stop the progress. I mean, this is the progress that COVID has forced us to go through, and we just need to, through learning experience, to improve year after the other. This is a destiny. As I said in a previous session, I don't remember which one, but a week ago, I said that COVID is not an exception. We had SARS, we had swine flu, we had the avian flu, and with increased globalization, chances for any new virus to become pandemic are not slim. So we have to live with COVID as this is the new normal. This is not an exception. There will be other viruses in the future. So we have to go through this experience and improve with time. I agree with Dr. Hulaim that this was done abruptly, and we didn't yet reach, and by far, something really convincing. But we are starting, and we have to learn. And these sessions about COVID is the best thing that has been done, in my opinion, is to try to learn from each other's experience. I finished. Hello? Was I heard to begin with?
Yes,
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 yes, we heard you well.
Yes.
I think
okay.
it's a very good point you make about pandemic disease, and yeah, maybe this will be a never-ending train of problems, and we should be ready for that.
I see your question in here, Dan, in the chat. I was just noticing it. Question for College Board team. Do you feel that the precision of the scores was negatively affected to some degree? The time pressure and distance this term made me feel less confident in my judgment of student attainments. That's a great question. We have 25,000 college faculty and AP teachers, many of whom have participated in AP scoring before, going through, and I've been doing office hours with them twice a day, getting their reflections. We expanded the process that we call the pre-reading, which is where we get thousands of student samples, and we consensus score them with our expert scoring leaders to the rubric and the scoring guidelines specific to each question, but there's sort of a generic rubric per task type. And so, one of the things that we do in this AP scoring is we have some reliability measures to make sure there's inter-rater reliability of the scores, and we look to see how it sort of compares with similar task types. So far, we're seeing that student responses are pretty impressive, considering how they had to take the exam, how their year was ended early, and we're seeing a good amount of reliability as well. So I am feeling good about the quality of the scoring, and the anecdotal evidence that I have so far is that the scorers are pretty impressed with students' abilities. So I think we're going to study it for some time, but I'm looking forward to learning more once we have a little bit more time to reflect on it.
Thanks for your answer, Terry. Kathy asked me to elaborate a little bit about my own comment, that I felt personally a little bit less confident of my own ability to assess students during this term. I felt I had less time with each individual student to size them up. And even on the exam, which we ran remotely, I felt a little bit less sure that I was getting the students' best. In fact, there was a student who I thought was probably one of the strongest students, and they only earned about a C on the final exam. And I wondered what had happened. This student got very good scores on 3 of the questions and skipped 2 of them completely. And I followed up, and they said, well, I knew that I had gotten a passing score and I just stopped. So for us, a challenge was that we switched to pass no record grading. And I have to admit that in hindsight, I felt a little relieved that I didn't have to make the kind of fine judgments I usually have to make about who earned a B versus an A. And pass no record grading relieved us of that responsibility this term. But I know we have to get back to it soon. And yeah, for me, it was just time pressure and also feeling disconnected from students.
Yeah, no, that's, oh, sorry, Dan.
No, please go ahead.
I was going to build on that. It's one of the best metaphors that we were working with as we sort of made decisions while we were building this solution and designing the questions. I saw a number of questions when I went back to the chat around us using just 2 questions. And we selected questions that had a good correlation with the overall exam score, but how can you how can you have 2 exam questions be representative of a 3.5-hour exam that's, you know, essentially multiple facets? And the metaphor was sizing for a shirt. And typically, you know, an AP exam is a very custom shirt. There's measurements all over in terms of, you know, sleeve length, collar size, and all kinds of other measurements that try and have that shirt fit that particular student, so we can really make sure we get the right fit, and we understand, you know, where they are from a skills and content mastery level. And this year we had like two measurements, right? We had sort of collar size and sleeve length, and that's, you know, that's a good enough measurement. And in some respects, if you're sort of, you know, carrying on the metaphor, but what I'm really looking forward to is sitting in this week and next week with our psychometricians to see how they look at some of the statistical data and compare it to what's been available for years and those question types, and how we make some judgments using the data to find out where we draw those lines. And that's the thing that's hard. If a student has submitted work that only gives us 2 measurements, did we get enough for that student to really make sort of the right call? And you know, you can argue both sides of that, of course. So I equally feel some sort of anxiety around that, but I'm looking forward to just learn a little bit more, and of course just studying it beyond what we learned from these exam results.
So I see that we're at the end of our appointed time, and so I want to make sure that I do say thank you to everyone who participated, especially our speakers today from the College Board, Terry, Kathy, Abby, from the partner universities, Tamer, Loy, everyone. I want to thank you so much for your participation. And again, the Mansoura response to COVID was just so impressive. I think that I've learned a lot from what the College Board did today, and so I'm forever in your debt.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for including us.
Thank you very much for joining us today, everyone.